Well, hello to you. It's Liz from Sew with Liz. And a while ago on my social media, I showed some hoodies that we bought for our granddaughter for Christmas. And she chose the designs with me. This was one of the designs she chose. She's passionate about horses. And I'm sorry it's shining a little. I tried various different lightings here in my studio, and I think it's just the shininess of the threads that it's picking up there. But it does have a slightly matte look in the correct lighting. So I shared that she chose these designs from OESD, or some people know it as embroidery online. And we scrolled through the designs and she actually picked exactly what she wanted. So those were the horses on a black hoodie. And then this, she's also passionate about wolves. And so she chose this wolf. They were both quite small designs. But what I did was I took it into my AccuDesign app. It's a Genome AccuDesign app. And it has a very good resizing function. And I resized them as large as they would go for my largest hoop on my embroidery machine. And I was actually very happy with the results. I've been very happy with most results that I've done resizing that way. And it's super easy. All you do is click fit to hoop, choose the hoop you want. And it took the design that was that size and made it this size, which is really handy. Okay, so that was that. And I shared on social media that I was not able to sew in the well. Now, what sewing in the well means is that when I hooped up the back of this hoodie, you want to get this front of the hoodie out of the way. So you would spread it away from the hooping like this. But because I was using a large hoop, it kind of went like that. And I thought, well, let me see if I can maybe fiddle around with this and get it to work. But you know what? After I had basted it to the stabilizer, the basting didn't even work. And that's just on the outside of it. And I thought, no, it's just not going to work. So I had to go to plan B, which is what you quite often have to do if you are doing embroidery on ready to wear. In other words, the garment is already fully constructed and you want to do an embroidery like this. If I was making the hoodie from scratch for her and I had cut out this fabric in a particular hoodie pattern, I would have done the embroidery on the back before I put the garment together. But in this instance, I couldn't. So then I was somewhat dismayed to find that this hoodie was actually constructed in a tube of fabric. So you quite often can buy knit fabrics and they call it tubular knits. So it had no side seams. So I thought, oh, do I, don't I, do I, don't I? But in the end, I thought the only way I'm going to be able to do this is to create a side seam. So what I did was I opened up the binding and I cut a side seam all the way up both sides. Then it was absolutely no problem at all. Just was a little bit of extra work for me, but I love my granddaughter, so I really did not mind that at all. And then I had the back, as it were, flapping separately, and it was totally easy to move the front of the hoodie and the sleeves and the hoodie part all out of my way and hoop this so that it didn't stretch, and it was all really lovely. What I also did was I attached on the back, I ironed fusible knit interfacing, some people call it fusible tricot, onto the back of the wolf, just to cover over any of those little scratchy threads and knots that you get on the back of embroideries. And then I made it go a little past the embroidery, so it's attached to the inside. And do follow the instructions of whichever of those fusible interfacings you use to make sure that you get a good contact. And also think in terms of the type of fabric you're using, because you don't want to make it too hot and then go scorching something that you've already spent a whole lot of time and effort on. Once it was done, I then serged up the side seams. So there they are with my serger, and I used a gray thread, 4-thread serging. And then lastly, I sewed the ribbing together again. And then last of all came here and joined the ribbing back onto the bottom of the hoodie. So like I say, it was a little bit of extra work, but not too bad at all. So that's what you sometimes have to do. This, I did exactly the same. I had to go and do the side seams. So I did that with 2 of hers, but what I had promised her when I gave them to her with no embroidery on them on Christmas Day, because these had just arrived at my door with the ubiquitous Amazon, and we are going to do her name on the sleeve. And I'm just trying to get, yeah, it's the right sleeve she wants it on. So this is the front of the hoodie. It's hard to see because it's black. And yes, there are a few little fluffy things sticking to it and cat hairs. They are a cat house. And it's been through the wash a couple of times. So what we are going to do is we are going to embroider her name on the sleeve. And I haven't done that yet. And I want to use my free arm hoop, which your machine may have, may not have. My machine does have it. And she wants her name roughly the size of this hoop, which is perfect. So I did a little bit of experiment. I wasn't sure it would work. And I thought I'd have to go to the plan B like I did with the first thing, but I tried. So I'm just going to put the hoop here and pretend that it's attached to the machine. And obviously I would take the inside of the hoop out. And so far, so good. I can put that hoop inside the sleeve. That's fine. And I could also attach the inside of the hoop to that and press it down into the hoop. And I could now take it to the machine. But I have to get rid of this fabric on the back because obviously it's just going to embroider the 2 halves of the sleeve together. And I tried. I took this hoop to my machine and I took my table off the machine and I put this sleeve around the free arm of my machine. That's why this is called a free arm hoop. But do you know what? It does have its limitations because it's for a child. My granddaughter is only 9, and it's a bit too narrow. And so what happened was this was stretching for all it's worth, and that's not the greatest stretch between my 2 hands. The greatest stretch is going lengthwise down the sleeve. So I stretched it around that free arm hoop, and I knew right away that it was not going to work because your hoop moves around with the embroidery machine. And I tried it with just the positioning, the tracing of her name, and the machine was making all sounds of really bad noises. So I stopped it right away, and I knew that we had to go to plan B. So what I am now going to do, and I'm going to get out my nifty seam ripper, and I have showed this in a couple of my videos and people have expressed an interest. I was at a sewing retreat in November with some really good friends of mine, and they were using these, and they saw me struggling with one of those sort of El Cheapos, and they said, Liz, you've got to get one of these. And so they phoned up their friend whose husband makes them. And what it is it's like that. And you can put the seam ripper away. And the other end is a stiletto or an awl. Awl. I always say awl because my accent's a bit different. And apparently, I haven't had to do it yet, but apparently you can buy refills of these if yours gets blunt. So I ordered one, and I am now the very proud owner of this. Now, I thought that I could get them for my website and sell them on my website because I'm really kind of sold on them. They're sturdy, they don't roll off the table, and I can put that pokey thing away and not worry about losing the cap. However, the lady informed me that her husband just does it as a hobby, and he does not want to be meeting deadlines and big orders. So if anybody's interested in this, she is willing for me to share her email, and you can place an order direct with her, and you'll have to talk to her about pricing. They do come with 2-ended ones like I've shown you, but there are some that are just the seam ripper, and they're a little less expensive. These are not cheap seam rippers, I will tell you that, but I am glad I paid what I did because it's worth the money. All right, so what I will now do is of an evening when I'm watching TV and I have a good light on this black fabric, because it'll go for my eyes if I don't, I am going to undo the sleeve seam and the binding, probably up to about halfway through, well, actually a little bit beyond the elbow. Just enough that I can open out the sleeve and flatten it, and then put it into my free arm hoop and stitch her name on both of the sleeves, both the wolf one and this horse one. So that's talking about the plan Bs of this situation where you are embroidering on ready to wear. Now I had this ready to wear little sweatshirt. It's got a short little zipper on the front. And, you know, I really didn't wear it that often. The fabric says that it is 60% cotton and 40% polyester. I'm not totally sure what the fabric is. It might be a kind of textured French terry. It might just be a good old sweatshirt fabric. And I didn't wear it very often because, quite frankly, it's a somewhat nondescript, kind of dull, bland color. It's kind of, the camera is showing it up more gray than what it actually is. It's more of a green with gray tinges in it. And so I was off to a holiday in Mexico in winter, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to need something for the plane. And because I don't like the air conditioning in planes, it always makes me cold. And I also may need something in the evenings in Mexico, because it was still winter there in Mexico, albeit not a winter like a Canadian winter. Okay, so I took this out the cupboard and I thought, let me test that sewing in the well, which was plan A. So what I did was I got my sweatshirt out, and this is a design. I can't honestly remember where I got it from. It was a freebie and I downloaded it off the internet. If anybody is super interested, I will try and find it again as to where I got it. It was a monochrome design, and I chose to use a variegated green and sort of blue thread. And if I bring it up closely, you will see that variegated look. And if I focus it, you might then see it. Yeah, I think you can see it better there. I just wanted something subtle, nothing too garish and gaudy, because I do prefer, in many respects, I do prefer tone-on-tone embroidery on things that I wear. So now I'm going to be I was hooping this up in my SQ23 hoop, which is 8x8 inch hoop. And my heart sort of stopped for a couple of moments, because I wondered if I would be able to hoop it up in my hoop and still get the front of that sweatshirt away, or whether I was going to have to go to plan B, which was what I had to do with my daughter's hoodies. Now, she's only 9 years old and a lot smaller than her granny, obviously. So what I did was I sort of crossed my fingers and hoped for the best. And as it happens, this is what sewing in the well is all about. Basically, you spread the sweatshirt out and you hoop it up in your hoop with only the back of the sweatshirt, or the front if it's the front you want to be embroidering on. I've got one behind me in a very textured sweater knit, and obviously I'm going to have a topping on that. I do believe I put a topping on this too, because the fabric is slightly textured and I just wanted the best results that I could get. So it was just one of those water soluble stabilizers that's got like a filmy look. It looks like plastic or saran wrap, and I put that on the top and it worked very well. So I hooped it up in my hoop, making sure that I got all the bits and pieces of the sweatshirt away. Now you can see as I move it, it wants to fall inwards. So it is kind of like a well. That's why we call it embroidering in the well. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get some pegs, or, you know, those bulldog clips, big paper clamps, and be gentle with it. And you're going to want to sort of scrunch up and put clips away from the hooping to keep this as flat as you possibly can. And it will take a little bit of manipulation until you're ready. Now the hoop is going to start moving as it does its embroidery. This is one of the occasions when you do not go to the kitchen to make a cup of coffee. all right, or gaze out the window and not concentrate. This one needs babysitting, because if by any chance something comes undone and this falls into the well, you're going to have a bit of a disaster. All right. And yes, sometimes you can rescue it by unpicking and going back. Sometimes it's really hard to rescue it because it gets caught up here and then it pulls the hoop out of the, the inner hoop out of the outer hoop. And then you are kind of in serious trouble and you've got to fiddle for quite some time to get it hooped up in the correct place. It's not impossible to do, but I would definitely say it's an intermediate to advanced embroidery fixing job. All right. So I then did this embroidery, and I also actually for this one, because I'm an adult and I knew that I'd probably be wearing this sweatshirt over something else like a thin t-shirt, I did not worry to put that fusible tricot or fusible interfacing, knit interfacing. Got to be knit interfacing because this is a knit fabric. If I had put fusible woven interfacing on, it would have made this whole area that I fused it to rigid, and you don't want that on a knit garment. So as I say, this here, I did not put that interfacing. I just cut around my cutaway stabilizer. And I used cutaway stabilizer on my granddaughter's hoodies as well. And the kind I like using is this mesh. It works really well. And I know that this was not an exorbitantly high stitch count, but it carried my embroidery and held my embroidery, supported my embroidery perfectly. If it had been a much larger, much more dense, many more stitches in the design, I probably would have put 2 layers of my mesh cutaway. All right, because I've only got the one kind of cutaway. I don't have like lightweight, medium weight, heavyweight. I just really have a problem with keeping all of those things in my small studio. So it worked for me. So that is your plan A, which is embroidering in the well. And generally speaking, that is more suited to garments that are very loose. Let's say you bought a very loose fitting jacket and you wanted to put that on the back of the jacket. Well, if it was a jacket, it probably would have buttons or it would be open down the front. So that's not a good example. Let's think of something else. Perhaps a skirt. All right, if you've got a skirt and it's not got a zipper and you want to do some embroidery on that, you might need to do embroidery in the well. But it does work, but it's usually on larger garments. Baby onesies, it can be done using the free arm hoop, but you are going to have to look at the construction of the onesie and figure out how you are going to hoop that with the rest of the onesie being completely out of the way and only the part that you're embroidering is actually hooped up. And there are many onesies that you actually can purchase online or at stores that specifically cater to embroidery for little babies. And I'm probably going to have to look at that soon because I have a new grandbaby coming and it's going to be a little girl and she's coming in the summer. So those are called blanks. And so if you look for embroidery blanks online, you should be able to find something like that if that's what you're looking for. Okay, so I think I've covered what I needed to cover with plan A, which is embroidering in the well, and plan B, which is you've got to undo some seams. Yeah, you can also do it on the side of pants. And if they're ready to wear pants, you could try, if it was low enough on the leg, you could try to see if the free arm hoop would work. I think a pair of leggings might be troublesome, much like the sleeve on my daughter's hoodie, granddaughter's hoodie. But if they are sort of slightly wider leg pants, this probably could work. But otherwise, I would highly recommend that you undo seams on ready to wear. Just be judicious about it. You don't have to go unpicking every seam in sight, just the one that will help you to open it out wide enough. And secondly, also you could, if you're making the garment, make sure that you plan to do the embroidery before you start sewing up those seams, and that will create a much easier project for you. Okay, so thanks so much for listening today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, you're very welcome to ask them here on my YouTube channel, or you can go to my Facebook group, Sew and Learn with Liz Thompson, and I will be more than happy to answer any of these sort of slightly tricky hoopings. Any questions you've got, I'm super happy to answer those. See you again another time.